Titmus Sheds is the biggest shed on the island of Sodor. This is where the engines big and small would come together and rest there after a hard day's work. Some engines would rest there in between jobs, while others would spend the whole night there and ready to start work refreshed the next day. As the sun began to set, Gordon arrived back at Titmus Sheds after pulling the express. He was the first engine to arrive back. Finally I can get some peace and quiet for a chance, and hopefully a good night's sleep. Gordon was surprised to hear Percy's whistle as Percy arrived at the sheds. Percy was spending the night at Titmus Sheds before returning to his work on Thomas's branch line the next day. Well, little Percy, said Gordon grandly. It's nice to have you with us for a change. You and Thomas and Toby are running that branch line of yours efficiently, I suppose. I think so, Gordon, replied Percy, though he wasn't quite sure what efficiently meant. That's right, rumbled the big engine. No late trains or angry passengers. An efficient railway is a great responsibility, as I, of course, know only too well. What the Fat Controller would do without me to keep things running smoothly, I simply can't imagine. James and Henry do their best, Gordon went on, but someone has to keep a responsible eye on things. It must be splendid to race along with a train of heavy coaches, sighed Percy enviously. When you were ill that time, it took Thomas and Duck and me to move them, and even then the three of us couldn't go very fast. Never mind, said Gordon. You kept things running. That's what matters. It's a knack, I suppose. My big wheels help, but there's no more to it than that, of course. The two engines continued to have their conversation till more engines arrived at the sheds that night. Eventually, everyone went to sleep. The next morning, Gordon had steamed up before Percy. He was ready to pull the express. Percy needed water, but because he hadn't enough steam to move, Gordon offered to help by pulling him over to the water column. Thank you, Gordon, said Percy gratefully. That would be very kind. Not at all, replied Gordon grandly. It all helps the smooth running of the railway. Responsibilities, my dear Percy, responsibilities. Gordon went off the turntable first. Percy was able to use the last bit of steam to move onto the turntable to change onto Gordon's track, and Gordon does the rest. Percy had a long drink, and soon his steam pressure had risen nicely, and he was ready to go and find his trucks. Gordon, meanwhile, had not returned to the shed. He dozed in the sunshine until it was his turn to take water. Percy moved away. Gordon tried to follow him, but found that he couldn't. Come on, Gordon, said his driver. We haven't got all day. Your train is due out in an hour. I can't move, Gordon groaned fiercely. I got cramp. I can't move my pistons. Percy's driver came to see what was the matter. Jam valves, I reckon, said Gordon's driver. And while the fireman went to find an inspector, Percy gently buffeted up to Gordon's front. Pushing hard, he managed to push Gordon back into the shed, and then went quietly away to fetch his trucks. He didn't say anything. Somehow, it didn't seem tactful. Later, when Percy met Thomas at the junction, he told him what had happened. Poor old Gordon, chuckled Thomas. But that's what it is to have responsibilities. And the two of them puffed off to run the branch line as efficiently as they knew how. One of the stations on Thomas's branch line, Dryle, is near an airfield. Sometimes flying displays are held there during the summer, and then Annie and Clarabelle, as well as special trains pulled by Percy and Toby, are full of people. When the flying is finished, the visitors get into the trains again so that Thomas and his friends can take them home. Fancy giving ourselves a stiff neck watching all that, Thomas says scoffingly. I got better things to do. But Percy liked the aeroplanes. I think it's fun, he said. It must be nice to be able to fly wherever you want. Pooh, said Thomas. Who needs to buzz about like that? I'd rather have my safe rails, thank you. And he puffed away. Thomas doesn't like flying, is he? Said Harold. Take no notice, said Percy. He's just jealous. He thinks he's better than anyone else, flying or not. One day, Percy came back to Farquhar's sheds with some startling news. Some men had arrived at the airfield and were being taken up in an aeroplane so they could jump out of it. They got sort of umbrella things, he explained. They opened them and carried them down safely. They're called parachutes, said Toby. The men are from the army. They come on a special training exercise. Nonsense, grunted Thomas. I am not interested in hearing that. And with that, he went to sleep. The parachute exercise went on all day too. That evening, when Thomas stopped at the station by the river for a drink, the station master came along the platform. Hold the train for a few minutes, please, he said to the guard. One of those parachute chaps has landed in the river, and they think the best way to get him back to the airfield is by train. That, said Thomas gruffly, would serve him right. I have a good mind not to wait. Now, Thomas, warned his driver, just remember where you would have been if Terence hadn't helped you out of the snow. Thomas did remember. He said he was sorry, and a few minutes later, the soldier, very wet and miserable, was helped into Clarabelle. The signal lifted, the guard blew his whistle, and Thomas set off. Hurry, 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 he puffed. He was anxious to make up for his bad temper. It wasn't far to the airfield, and Thomas reached the station quicker than ever before. The soldier was helped off the train, and his officer came to thank Thomas. I'm glad I could help. Percy and Toby noticed Thomas had a changed attitude when he returned to the sheds. Thomas told the two what happened earlier, and both were very happy that Thomas did have a change of heart. But I still think that jumping out of an aeroplane is very silly. And all three engines laughed.